All right, so yesterday we talked about responsible manufacturing, responsible production. We focused a little bit more on the product. Today we'll focus a little bit more, I would say, on retail, but not just retail, on accessibility, I would say. So today we'll focus on one of the issues of sustainability, sustainable fashion, which is the one of making the products available to the final consumers, giving visibility to sustainable products. So I believe that we already solved the issue of integrating ethics and aesthetics, meaning that we do have a lot of brands that are sustainable and beautiful, but we do have an issue that we still have to solve. And we are glad today to speak with two representatives of players that are able to solve this issue, I would say, or are trying to at least. And I'm referring to, once again, Good On You. It's an app that decided to, through a ranking, and we will be speaking about this with Sandra in a moment, to give visibility to sustainable fashion brands. And on the other side, Wine Up, and we'll be speaking with Francesco in a moment, that is a leading fashion e-tailing group. And in this case, of course, the products are made available to the final consumers. So starting from Sandra. Sandra, what I would like to ask you as co-founder of Good On You, how did the idea come to you? And also, most final consumers say that they would like to purchase more responsible clothes, but then they don't know where to start. So could you share with us how the idea of the ranking began, and also how does it work?
Okay. So yeah, firstly, thanks also for having me. I actually was just completing my MBA in Melbourne, Australia a few years ago now, when I was also working in the corporate sector and in the banking industry, where I got to see what was going on behind the scenes of big business. And I always thought that business could be an important driver for social good and environmental good, but it needed, people behind it to make that change. And I worked for many years in sustainability and corporate social responsibility, in similar roles to what Francesco is in now, where, I had the chance to, get big companies to focus on social change. But I got a little bit tired of working within big business, and I started thinking more about the role that I had as an individual to also drive business to be more sustainable and fair. And I realized that I wasn't alone, that a lot of people wanted to make more values-based decisions, wanted to shop more sustainably, more ethically, but didn't know how. And as I said, I was working in banking. I just finished my MBA, and I got really lucky, and I met my co-founder, Gordon, who had already done a lot of research on this shifting consumer trend. You mentioned before, a lot of people are like me, are like us, or like this group of people that have joined today, that are wanting to make more responsible choices when they're buying clothes, when they're buying many things. He had already started thinking of this idea of a simple brand rating system that could help people know the impact of brands very easily, very accessibly, and use that information to buy better for themselves, and also collectively to drive the industry to change. That was back in 2015, and today we're now a widely used global app for fashion that rates thousands of fashion brands for their impact on people, the planet, and animals. That looks at all the complex issues in fashion, all the different standards and certifications, and tries to bring it all together and make sense of that for shoppers in a simple way.
Okay, great. And could you tell us a little bit more also about how does it work? How can consumers, if they're interested to know more about a brand, how do they, of course, they download the app first, and then what is the process? How does it work?
So we know that, you know, sustainability and ethics, they're confusing terms, and they can also mean different things to different people. But very consistent themes that consumers and shoppers and everybody cares about is the impact of their choices on people, the planet, and animals. So we created a rating system that looks at all the material issues within those 3 areas of impact, and all the leading industry standards and indicators that line up with those material issues. And like I mentioned before, our role is to bring all of that research together and turn it into something simple that shoppers can understand and use in their day-to-day shopping. So we rate brands from 1 to 5. 1, we avoid the brand, through to 5, it's great. On the 3 issues of people, planet, and animals, and then overall for the brand. So shoppers can literally use Good On You to find out how any brand rates, their favourite brand, the high street brand. We've rated 2,500 brands. And they can also use Good On You to get recommendations. Maybe they find out that their favourite brand doesn't rate so well on an issue that's really important to them. So we give recommendations on similar brands that do better on sustainability and on ethics, but also match on the other things we care about when we shop. So, you know, the price of a brand, its style, its location, to really empower people to not only know the impact, but to do something with it, to get behind brands that are doing good and use their purchasing power to incentivize industry change.
Okay, great. We'll come back to you with some more questions in a moment, but first I want to ask Francesco about the objective and the main mission of Net Sustain and Yuxigen, part of YNAP. Specifically, these 2 projects, I think, are aiming to give visibility to sustainable fashion. So Francesco, do you agree? Consumers still need to know where to start. We need to give more visibility to sustainable fashion. And this is also why probably YNAP decided to give visibility to them through Net Sustain and Yuxigen.
Hello everyone, first of all, thanks for inviting me. It's a pity that we cannot look in the eyes with the audience, but it's okay. So going to YNAP, yeah, as you said, we really think that now sustainable fashion is becoming something quite important. But as Sandra was saying, we also really think that not everyone agrees on what sustainable fashion is. So sustainability can vary. The idea of sustainability can vary from person to person. So what we always thought is that, yes, we need and we have to give visibility to sustainable brands. But first of all, we need to take a stand and decide what is sustainability for us. So define the criteria. As she was saying, people, planet, animal, it could be locally made, it could be the materials that you're using. I mean, you can focus on all of them, you can focus on only one. It's up to you in a way. But the moment that you define what sustainability is for you, then you can take a stand, you can claim it. And then I think that from that moment on, we as a retailer, what we need to do is to not look only at big brands, not just look at emerging brands. It has to be a mix. You have to be very honest and impartial and fair, and in a way to assess them all. And also, when it comes to small brands, small designers that just started and maybe don't have the potential to reach out to such a big retailer like YNAP, then it's up to YNAP to actively look for them, or maybe to give them the possibility to emerge, or to create some challenges that they can participate at, for example, and through that, then they will either develop their own collection or have a chance to sell it on our portal. So all I'm saying is that, to me, what is important is, yes, giving visibility to sustainable fashion, but first of all, define what sustainability is for you. Second of all, being active in looking for it, and in a way to co-participate in the journey of the brand. Because if you do that, then you will be the first one willing to give them visibility. Because it's not just up to them only anymore. It's also up to you. So I think this is the rationale behind.
Good to know. And yeah, you were saying actually you need to be active. So I have a curiosity. Is it more you going to the brands, or is the brands coming to you? Probably it depends. It depends on the contractual power. It depends on the level of visibility that they already have. But I'm curious to know if it is both, if it is mostly the brands coming to you. How does it happen? And also, you were talking about criteria for sustainability. So in the buying process, I'm curious to know if you have also precise criteria for defining sustainability when you decide to select a brand, or maybe not to select a brand.
Definitely. So the first question was whether they come to us or we go to them, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So again, it's a mix, meaning that at the beginning, when we started, so let me take a step here. So Yuxogen started 10 years ago, okay, 11 actually, but it grew throughout all this period, and it changed many times. But the idea has always been to promote and highlight sustainable brands. Net Sustain actually was born last year, and so Net Sustain was brand new, and at the beginning the brands didn't know about it. So at the beginning it was us reaching out to them, explaining them what we had in mind, this project. Some said, yes, it's super interesting, we want to be in. Some others said, we don't feel ready, or let's see farther along the way how we will go. So the beginning was us. But then, thanks to the great success we've had, of course, now it's a mix between us reaching out to brands if we have some new projects in mind, or is brands proposing to us. So yeah, again, it's a mix. Of course, it began with us looking for brands, but now it's really, it can be whatever. If you don't imagine the amount of emails that we receive right now, because and it's super nice. It's super nice to get that engagement, to see that energy and passion outside in the market. And sometimes it's also hard to say no to some brands. But again, to connect to your second question is, yes, we do have criteria. We have a strict criteria actually. We have a two-level assessment. So we first assess the brand as a brand in general, so their social and environmental performances. Once we think that the brand is okay, so can be part of our sustainable edit, then we assess the products themselves. So we have some strict criteria. So depending on, as I said, our system is built more, Sandra was saying before, on some criteria. So Net Sustain has their own criteria. For a product to be part of Net Sustain, it needs to meet at least one of these criteria. One, even more, of course. In order to make sure that it meets at least one, we have defined some strict requirements that we send out to the brand, and they have to come back to us explaining and showing, and also giving us the proofs that that's the case. So once all these steps has been taken, then the brand can put their product on our sustainable list.
Clear. Thank you so much, Francesco. I'll come back in a few minutes. I would like to ask Sandra, also similar question, how do you select the brands? And also, I'm curious to know if you accept also suggestions, maybe coming from the peers. I would call them P2B suggestions, so peer to business. And also, we talked about the ranking before. How do you make the ranking credible and also actionable, and also how to make sure the criteria are the best ones for the final consumers? So maybe, don't know if you had the chance to revise the criteria in time or if they were the same since the beginning.
So the first part of your question was
how
about
do you select the brands? So it's about,
how do we select them?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, we prioritize brands that are useful to our community of users. So, you know, we consider ourselves a global community of people who love fashion, and they are using the app to, as I mentioned before, find out how their favorite brands rate, but also discover new sustainable alternatives. So they can use the Good On You app to send requests to us of brands that they want rated, and we try and prioritize those. We also get hundreds of brands contacting us all the time too, wanting to be rated, wanting to be on the platform. And you know, I think that's a great testament to how the industry has progressed, that there's more and more of these brands emerging and that they see value in being connected with the Good On You community. So yeah, we actually have a long backlog of brands sitting in that list, but we you know, work our way through that. We also work directly with retailers who use the Good On You rating system as their criteria set for choosing brands to work with, to stock and communicate to their customers. There are a number of, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was curious to know if they do it just in the back office, let's say, or they also share it with the final consumers at retail level.
Both. So the biggest example we have is Farfetch, who use the Good On You rating system to curate and promote their own conscious edit. They have, similar to Net Sustain, they have Positively Conscious, which is a selection of their best sustainable brands that have been selected using the Good On You brand rating system. There are a number of other retailers that have just used Good On You ratings and our database of ratings as a sourcing platform, so to identify new sustainable brands to stock. But increasingly, because we're becoming a trusted mark that many shoppers and people identify with, then it's an easy way for retailers to firstly establish the criteria, but also present information in a way that the consumers trust. Okay,
and also, do you accept suggestions coming from the final consumers? Or yeah, you said also maybe the retailers, of course, are a big source for you, but also final consumers?
Yeah, so they that's where they can use the Good On You app to request brands that they want to see, and we actually, that's our main priority. In everything we do, we're really trying to advocate for the consumer access to information. So we prioritize the brands that they want to see the ratings of, and we prioritize giving them access to information.
Oh, great. And the criteria, they've always been the same, or even you changed them in time? I don't know if there was an update in the last years.
We've always had the 3 pillars of people, planet and animals that roll up to an overall rating of 1 to 5. But as I'm sure everyone here appreciates, the issues in fashion and in sustainability are always evolving and emerging. So we have a head of ratings that's responsible for our methodology. He's an environmental scientist and has always got his eye on emerging standards and changes in industry best practice. And we consult quite regularly with NGOs, with industry peak bodies. Last year, for example, we undertook quite an in-depth consultation of our methodology with Fair Trade, 4 Paws, Fashion for Good. We also had input from the Sustainable Apparel Coalition and Fashion Positive to make sure that our ratings methodology reflected what was happening today, reflected the most material issues in fashion today. So that, you know, behind the scenes, we're trying to be a really robust, comprehensive approach that, you know, from a consumer perspective is really simple and accessible, but sitting behind that is something quite, you know, complex to reflect the complexity of the issues in sustainable fashion.
Thank you so much. I'll come back in a few minutes. I want to ask Francesco something else. So we talked about transparency since the beginning. We understood that the consumers want to know more about the product, what is behind the product. If we consider what brands are doing, just few brands are truly transparent. So my question is, do you try maybe to push a little bit the brands to provide more information? Do you think it's enough like this? What do you think the future is going to be? Maybe the brands will be will be forced to be more transparent?
I think they will. I think they will be forced, but not forced by us or by, no, I think they will be forced by the market, because basically there will be more and more brands sharing and being more and more transparent, and those that will not will be left behind. So I think they will in future. And at the same time, as I said before, us personally, I mean, us as a company, what we do, we set a minimum amount of questions and documents and certifications that we need from you. And if you're not able to provide them, you as a brand, of course, if you're not able to provide them, we try to have a talk first in order to understand why it's the issue. Because maybe you're just a small brand and you don't have certification. That doesn't mean that you are not sustainable. So we're open for everything. We, as Sandra was saying, we always ask help from the experts. So we always have an expert vetting our system, so that it's not just us and the brand. We always want to have someone like a third party to vet the system. And so yeah, that's how it works. In the end, I must tell you that you would be surprised about the fact that the reasons why sometimes brands are not transparent are different from the reason that people think. Maybe because brands sometimes are so old school in a way that they think that your goal is to steal their information, and they have no clue what you do with this information. Once you explain them that you're just simply trying to make sure that what you claim, and what you claim, I mean the fact that you are claiming that they are sustainable, you just want to back up your claim, right? So once they understand that, at least based on our experience, usually things become to be very easier. So the process becomes very easier and very smoother. And did I answer the question?
Yeah.
Am I missing a part of the question?
No, because I'm posting very long questions. That's the problem. But yes, you answered the question, and I agree with you on the fact that, of course, there are different business models. So we don't have just you know, the mainstream brands, but we do have also maybe small brands that were based on sustainability since the beginning, that were born from sustainability in their DNA. So in that case, maybe they didn't even think of communicating so much since the beginning. So since you're especially selecting that brand that have sustainability in their DNA, of course, your role is also the one of suggesting, maybe even giving some maybe format, I will say, So yeah, this is also very important. Big players should also support smaller players in this.
I'll tell you, if I may, I'll tell you that it's very nice to work with big brands because, of course, you learn also from them. But it's also super nice to work with small brands or small designers because in that case, you learn from that, but they learn from you. It's a mutual thing. We tried when what you just described happens. We try to provide them with some toolkits or with some educational material, something like that. And it's very nice to see the way that you grow together with them. So your business grows with their business, and you know, it's a very nice sharing of energy.
Yeah. Also yesterday, of course, we were referring to the fact that sustainability, it's about partnership. So there is no other way of, improving through partnerships. Then, of course, you selected also some excellent startups that were born with sustainability in their DNA, such as RAD is the first name that is coming up to my mind. And yeah, so some players, even if small, are even great at communicating, but it's not all like that. I mean, it's we actually need to improve communicating sustainability. This is probably the task of 2020, even if online, but 2020 I think is the year of communicating better sustainability. And we already see some improvements there. Thank you so much. And I want to go back to Sandra for a moment. So there is more and more availability of classifications, rankings for brands in fashion, but not only. The first names that come up to my mind are the Fashion Revolution Transparency Index. If we consider food and cosmetics, for example, in France, there is the YOOX app. Or in Italy, for example, we have Il Vestito Verde, which is a database by Francesco, which is also a Bocconi student. So we do have a lot of players that are actually trying to, pull the information together, maybe make some rankings. So having an increased competition among online platforms, generally speaking, apps, databases, how do you differentiate compared with these other players? And also, how do you communicate your unique selling proposition, your USP of your service?
I think that what you've just explained is, or described, is part of the problem that we're trying to solve, in that, in fashion alone, there are literally hundreds of standards and certifications that cover a vast array of issues, and they're all really important standards and organizations and certification schemes, because they do hone in on something really specific, whether it be materials or chemicals, or whether a brand is certified vegan, and of course all the labor rights issues and how we define, measure the payment of living wage. They are complex issues, and they require very specific frameworks and schemes to help verify and assure that these requirements are being met. But good on you didn't want to just come in and develop yet another certification scheme. We see it as our role of understanding what all these mean, how they fit together, and presenting a holistic view of the fashion industry back to consumers. You mentioned the Fashion Transparency Index. That is an input to our rating for labour, for people. There's other indices and rankings that look at maybe the top a few hundred brands in fashion. Our rating system can be applied to any brand and doesn't just limit to a specific issue, to a particular brand size, but yeah, really tries to be comprehensive in what we cover to help make sense of all of these different rankings and things that are out there. We don't So therefore we don't see any of those other ranking agencies as competitors, but rather inputs to our data that we present back to consumers into a simple rating. Fashion Revolution was actually one of the consultation partners on our recent methodology review. So we're all about collaborating with industry and, but first and foremost, I guess, trying to make these issues understandable and our ratings really user-friendly for consumers. Yeah, I think that goes back to our unique selling proposition. It is about being a really comprehensive brand rating system that covers all the issues, but also all the brands in fashion, so that shoppers can really easily understand the impact of brands and use their purchasing power to shift the industry.
Great, and I agree with you on the fact that there is a lack of harmonization in the industry. There are also many standards, so we need definitely more projects like this that are trying to harmonize the different standards and also use them in order to get to a common way of communicating also to the consumers. Consumers actually need simplicity in the communication. Consumers need clarity. So yeah, thank you so much. I completely agree with you. We received a lot of questions already. So I'm going to share with you, both of you, starting from Francesco, some questions that we collected from the participants. We have now 143 participants. So given the the competition going on in these days with the webinars and meetings online, aperitivos, digital aperitivos, smart aperitivos, we did an excellent job actually. So congratulations.
Also aperitivo time now.
It is aperitivo. So Rafael, next time we should also have aperitivo. So let's bring also a glass of wine. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, to Francesco, in addition of having and putting forward sustainable brands, what is the next challenge for online retailers, so e-tailers, to be more sustainable? So what is the next challenge for sustainability for e-tailers?
There are so many. I mean, the part about the brands is more, let's say, the one related to brands and products. But then you have to think about the entire life cycle system of an e-tailer, which comes from the way that we store our products in the warehouse, goes until the way that we deliver them, all the logistics behind the packaging. So there are so many challenges out there, and yeah, I mean, and there are so many. It's not just about the product; it's also about the processes. So making all processes on top of the product circular, I think that's the real challenge.
Yeah, I agree with you. Circularity, it is actually a good challenge. Already is the present, is not even the future. So it's already 2020. Thank you so much, Francesco. And for Sandra, we have quite a provocative question. Of course, you are not forced to mention any brand, but since the ranking is public, I mean, probably we could even mention brands. But the participants were commenting on the fact that especially luxury brands do not have good ratings. So can you please share with us, on your point of view, why it's like this?
I think luxury brands have been slower to communicate on sustainability because they lead with other messages of quality and I guess identify with products and storytelling that's more emotive. And I think in the past that was maybe enough for consumers, but consumers are starting to realize that some luxury brands have have had to change their business models as well, and have had to start to adopt some of the, you know, practices that are, you know, similar to fast fashion, the high turnover of stock and the use of materials that aren't inherently sustainable. So as consumers have started to raise more questions of all brands, including luxury, I think we've started to see a change in luxury. Of course, some brands are still more traditional, more focused on keeping secrets in-house and communicating, leading, you know, what they're talking about on and focusing on other things. But, you know, good on you. We're not saying that communicating sustainability needs to be part of your brand, you know, your top line story or your marketing campaign. We're just saying that it needs to be available somewhere, how you're addressing these important social and environmental issues. And there are luxury brands that are starting to make the change. I mean, Kering Group and all of the brands in their house, including Gucci and you know, Yves Saint Laurent, have made a lot of progress and do rate quite well, 3 out of 5 on Good On You's rating system, for some of the leadership that they're taking in environmental issues, in particular, in reporting their impact on environmental issues, and really tracking and tracing their supply chain and disclosing that to people in a much more transparent way than has been the norm for luxury houses.
Okay, so thank you for making it clear. So basically, you consider for the ranking basically not just what the companies do, but also what they communicate. So it's a matter of being transparent. So it's the transparency that, of course, is evaluated. And when you talk about transparency, you consider all the basically the media that could use online, offline, and especially online. You consider, for example, the sustainability reports, the sections of sustainability sections of the website. So all these elements. So yeah, I agree with you. It should be there, but unfortunately not for all the brands.
No, in fact, our ratings are based 100% on public information. We don't take information directly from brands. Yeah. We talk to brands who tell us about things that they're doing, but we only take that into consideration if they have published it somewhere, and it can be hidden in their sustainability reports, or, you know, in the disclosure section of their website.
And the social media? Social media as well, social media.
Yeah, we're looking at you know, any reports of you know, maybe negative citizenship or something that has been reported on in the media. But first and foremost, we're looking at a brand's website, and you know, for a small brand that maybe doesn't have big CSR teams and shareholders and annual reporting, they can still have a statement somewhere that talks about, you know, how they're making sure that their workers are being paid all the way down the supply chain, how they're, you know, taking care to consider which materials they're using and the impact that has on the environment. So we're always looking at publicly available information, because again, it goes back to us representing the consumer right to know, but we also know that transparency drives, you know, accountability for brands, and over time drives progress.
Okay, thank you so much, Sandra. And then we received a question for both of you. I think this is also related to what's going on right now. So you know that there was a huge discussion in the fashion industry related to the timing of the collections, the fact that we are probably going too fast, that we should reduce the timing. So this is the question for you. As supply chain is very fragmented, how do you check if the brands respect the criteria? And then also, Do you consider the number of collections delivered per year as one of the criteria to evaluate a brand as sustainable or not?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's for both of you. So I don't know if Sandra wants to answer first, Francesco. I think the inner question is, are we going too fast? Should we reduce the speed of the industry? And also there is another inner question that is related to the level of fragmentation of the industry, and also the supply chain that was spread so much in the last years. And of course, this is probably making it harder for the brands and also for you in a way to check if the brands respect the criteria.
I think it goes without saying that you know, parts of the fashion industry are going too fast when it comes to both production and consumption. You know, the whole cycle of make, use and dispose is just inherently unsustainable. It is causing a lot of damage to the environment, and it means that the, you know, faster we grow, we lose visibility of workers all the way down the supply chain. So if we lose visibility, how can we make sure that they're treated fairly? So Good On You does look at fast fashion business models when we're assessing a brand's impact on the environment, especially, and if we're seeing, you know, trends of I guess, you know, an example is weekly seasons, or models that don't have a way for consumers to care for products or extend the life of products, or ideally recycle products, then they're indicators of a system that's too linear and too fast. How do we check that a brand is doing what they say they're doing? Well, there's different levels to that. You know, that's why standards and certifications have such an important role, because it means that large brands especially are not only committing to do something, but are having that commitment independently audited and verified. We have a slightly, you know, different approach for large and small brands as well. And for small brands, it's about making sure they have fact-based policies and procedures that they're communicating publicly, but also tracking their performance against, so we can see progress over time.
Thank you so much, Sandra. And to Francesco, let me also comment on this. Well, the YOOX business model, actually, it's a business model that is somehow also related to the seasonality of the product. But somehow YOOX is trying to solve a problem, which is the one of you know, having a lot of stock available everywhere. So what YOOX is doing, but I leave the floor to Francesco, is basically to extending and you know, basically prolonging the product life cycle, because it's about yeah, use already basically previous collections, no? So
off season.
Yeah, off season. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
So yeah.
Francesco, if you want to make a comment on this.
No, I would like to stress again what also Sandra just said, that sometimes it's like the answer is very complex to this question, meaning that there's not a yes and no, a black and white. As she just said, there is a different approach depending on the fact whether you are a brand, a big brand or a small brand. If you're a big brand and you don't have some certifications that are nowadays became a standard for the sustainable fashion industry, then that could be maybe leave space for probably there is a problem here, right? If you're a small brand, you don't have certification, because no certification requires an economical effort, capacity effort. I mean, requires many effort that we understand the small brands don't have. So in that case, we try to look at the problem from the other side. So we try to understand maybe on a qualitative side, where are you located? Where is your supply chain? Can you are you willing to share with us the name of your suppliers and where they're located? Or just that is already something. If you're not scared about sharing who they are, where they are, it means that you have nothing to hide, first of all. Then, depending on where they hide, we try to how can I say? We try to connect the location of the suppliers to a sort of risk assessment ranking of different countries around the world, which means that on average, if you are located in certain countries, it will be harder. The possibility that you're exploiting forced labor or child labor is higher or is lower than other countries. So we try to mix all this data and to come up with a final solution. But again, it's a very complex answer to give to a very short question like this.
Yeah, thank you for the insight for now. So hopefully there will be the chance to speak further about it. But yeah, another question related to circularity for both of you. So right now you are focusing on helping consumers understand that sustainability of the brands once they shop new. So basically, yeah, you're trying to, sorry, I received a call. So you're trying to understand how the sustainability is important for the final consumers when they shop. But at the end of the day, from a consumer side, we need to slow the purchasing cycle and buy more used and circular solutions. Do you see the companies playing a role in this consumer behavior shift? And if yes, how? So the companies are already active really on circularity, or for now it's just about, you know, talking about it, pilot projects, but you don't actually see the big change at the moment?
I think the leading brands are doing something about circularity and are you know, educating and working with their consumers on it too. So circularity is something we definitely consider, again, as part of our planet rating or environmental rating, and that considers, you know, how a brand is producing quality garments, how they're educating their own customers on the use and care and repair. We reward brands that have a repair service or a guarantee, and also, you know, brands that are doing really creative things with upcycling materials or eliminating waste, textile waste, as well as, of course, you know, trying to figure out the solution to recycling. You know, some brands have gone as far as creating a full loop of producing a product and then handing that off to customers, but also taking responsibility of what happens even after they've sold the garment, and providing a way for that garment to either last a lifetime or go back into the chain of production. So yeah, that's still a responsibility of the brand, but of course consumers have a huge role to play in not only supporting brands that have circular business models, but you know, playing their part in buying things that they will cherish and look after over a period of time. Rather than, you know, just buying something and adopting that throwaway culture that has unfortunately become the norm.
Yeah, so could that be that in the future, maybe circularity, the durability of the product, but maybe even precise activities that brands are implementing on circularity could become also a criteria? Because if it is a criteria, for you, for you know, YNAP, e-tailers, for retailers in general, then it would be actually also, probably it will be educating the consumers.
It is part of our criteria set for when we're assessing a brand's impact on the environment. It's an important part of the environmental story. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Francesco, would you like to add anything else on this point? Otherwise, I have another question. And this is actually related to what you're doing with smaller brands, and it's for both of you. So basically, they have the opportunity, you have the opportunity to help share knowledge with smaller brands. And so how much you're being asked to consult and help brands identifying opportunities to improve their rating?
A lot. So the answer is a lot. This time is a very short answer. It's a lot. And as much as we developed a sort of toolkit material and some webinars as well, some educational material that we share with them, specific for smaller brands. This because we realized that it was a very frequent requirements from small brand. So and a part of our sustainability strategy is also education. You know, as you said, partnership and education is crucial when it comes to sustainability. So yes, and we are so much willing to do that because it's actually part of what we want to do, as much as selling sustainable fashion is also growing the sustainable fashion market. And up to the moment that we will not need to call it sustainable fashion anymore, we could end up calling it just fashion because it is sustainable.
So Rafael, next time we'll have to change the title. We cannot call it sustainability anymore. Okay. Yeah. And one last question for both of you. What is the size of your teams currently? And also, if you have any scale-up plans, can you share them with us? Scale-up plans to be able to rate more companies, to bring more companies on the platforms. This is the question.
Yeah, I can start. There's 10 people in the Good On You team, including myself and my co-founder. You might be able to tell from my accent, we started in Australia. We're an Australian company, but we have a global team, and we all work remotely. We were using Zoom and all of these channels for years before the rest of the world was forced to. But yeah, it's important for us to have people that represent, the community that we serve. So we've got staff in Montpellier, in Pomoy, in Bristol, the UK, and yeah, all of us are very much committed to the cause of making the future of fashion sustainable. And we all bring different skills across data science, environmental science, of course, marketing, communications, and business. And we definitely have scale-up plans. We've rated 2,500 brands, but for us, that's just scratching the surface of the fashion industry. We want to rate 10,000 brands by next year. We've also reached probably about 3 million people in the last 12 months with our sustainability ratings. And again, we really want to scale that and reach millions more, because, that's the core of our mission, is just to empower millions of people and use their power to drive industry change. So we're a great, passionate team now, but we've definitely got big plans to grow and achieve even more.
Thank you, Sandra. And also to Francesco, the inner question is, can we work for you? So basically, and I want to know if you hire and if there is the chance to participate in your sustainability team.
So actually, the sustainability team, we are very few. So we are 4 in total, 3 actually now. But that's the sustainability team, which doesn't mean that we are the only one dealing with sustainability throughout the company. Because the goal is exactly that. No matter what your role would be within YNAB, you will have to deal with sustainability or in your day-to-day basis, basically. Because, you know, we set up the ideas, but then the implementation goes to different departments, different roles. So, I mean, what I can say is very likely whatever you will apply for within YNAB, you will have to deal with sustainability. So feel free to apply. Looking forward.
Thank you so much, Francesco. And before thanking you once again, since I'm part of the scientific committee of the Vogue YOOX Challenge, I want to remind also to all the participants that if you are interested to become entrepreneurs of sustainable fashion of the future, you can also decide to participate to the Vogue YOOX Challenge. I think you have time until July 12th, if I'm not wrong. So just put on Google Vogue YOOX Challenge and you will get all the information. So this is a great opportunity, and also thanks to YOOX and Vogue, of course, for organizing this, also for our students, for the participants of this call as well. So thank you very much once again, Sandra, Francesco. I leave the floor to Raphael to invite all of you to the next event. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Thank you, Francesca. So we are running out of time today, but the series is not over. I will add our webpage in the chat now. You will find there more info about sustainability in general, but also more info about our next event, the next one is Thursday. And you will also have our contact if needed, if you have more questions. So thank you again for joining. Thank you, Sandra and Francesco, for being with us today. Thank you, Francesca, again for moderating and leading this conversation. Thank you for my team for making this happen. And I hope to see you all in 2 days, Thursday at 6 p.m. For our third event. We'll talk more about communication and customer expectation. Thank you very much and have a nice evening.
Thank you, Rafael.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.